We're now at the point of the research process where we are connecting the sample characteristics with our data analysis and beginning to evaluate hypotheses. And of course, the hypotheses we're evaluating are the ones that we would formulate right after asking research questions. So you had research questions from the beginning of the semester. The hypotheses would be your tentative answer to those questions. And again, we're at the point now where we're beginning to evaluate them. And that requires both interpreting the results of your data analysis, but also doing that interpretation within the characteristics or the context of your sample. So this is at the end of chapter 8 in the ebook. It's a little bit that kind of sums up how to do the hypothesis test, how to conduct a hypothesis test. Write out your research questions. Again, you had one of those at the beginning of the semester. You've added a variable to your project, so you have to add a research question to incorporate that variable into your project. Be sure to remove any words suggesting cause and effect. Use words like associated, related, more likely, less likely, instead of because or cause or effect. Also, describe the sample you will focus on. With the Add Health Wave 4 data that we're using, we're looking at a representative sample of young adults in the U.S. ages 24 to 32 years old. Thinking about your explanatory variable, this is what we are usually calling the independent variable. Which one is your response variable? This is the one we're usually calling the dependent variable, right? And make sure you know what type of variable each one is, right? You know the variable name, you know how you data managed it, and you know whether it is a categorical or a quantitative variable. With that information, you are ready to write the null and alternate hypothesis, right? We are testing hypotheses to be able to use sample data for understanding something about the population in which it comes out of, right? So when we write hypotheses, we are not making hypotheses about our sample. Instead, we are making hypotheses about the population that we're studying. The null hypothesis, that there's no association between our variables, is the one that the statistical analysis is able to test for us, but we would like to be able to reject that null hypothesis in favor of the alternate hypothesis, which is our research hypothesis. Which statistical test you will need in order to answer your research questions depends on how your variables were measured, right? And we ran those tests. So once you have the test, you're focusing on the p-value that is associated with the test statistic that you receive. When you have a p-value of less than 0.05, right, that is, if you multiply by 100, 5%, it means that you would be wrong less than 5% of the time if you reject the null hypothesis. And that means you're approximately 95% confident, at least 95% confident, that you have evidence to support your research hypothesis.